kind of the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to run through the presentation with you guys. Same format as any of you have been to my presentations before. I like interaction from the the people who are attending. This is a user group. This is your time. I want to make sure that you guys are getting the most out of it that you can. So please stop me and ask questions. It's going to look like I have a lot of slides, but we're probably going to churn through them pretty quickly. And I want to stop where you guys have questions. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Brad Marr. I am the virtualization practice lead at Focus Technologies. And basically my responsibility is I kind of run the virtualization practice. And one of the big focus areas that we have at Focus is on end user computing, which includes Horizon View, newly acquired app volumes. We're starting to ramp up on AirWatch. There's a lot of components to that space now. So I thought it would be good, since everybody kind of expects that I'm going to do something on VDI at these things now. I thought it would be a good refresher for everybody to kind of go through what the stack looks like top to bottom and really talk about some of the third-party tools that are out there that can help you guys be successful in your EUC endeavors. So, little brief agenda here. We're going to do quick 1-2 on who Focus is, a little bit of an update on us. We're going to talk a little bit about the first phase of EUC, which is profiling workloads and figuring out what exactly it is that you're going to virtualize from a desktop perspective. We're going to go over the building blocks of the Horizon View environment, all the components that are involved, some of the new information that's come out recently about app volumes being released, which was previously cloud volumes, dealing with profiles and applications, and everybody's favorite topic now is what about graphics acceleration? So now we've virtualized these real basic workloads. How do we keep moving up the stack? So a little bit about us. This is our 17th year in business, and we're pretty honored to be in the group of what CRN calls the Triple Crown Award, which is fastest growing, in the top 250 tech elite, and in the top 500 solution provider. So the idea is that you have both the sales, technical, and growth within the industry to support all three of these awards, and then they kind of stick on top of that the Triple Crown Award. There's only 26 VARs in, is it North America, Jack? In North America that are actually on that list. So we found it a big honor to be up there. We also have a seat on the technical advisory board with VMware as well, particularly to EUC. And what that involves is I take feedback that I get from situations like this and interactions with our customers, and I try to advise VMware along with with the rest of the group of individuals on how to move forward with the EUC portfolio. Changes that they're going to make, any type of repackaging of the platform. We try to help guide VMware on what we think our customers are looking for. Little list of our partner portfolio here. Just wanted to kind of splash this up here in case you guys are wondering, well, what vendors do you guys work with, and how can we work with you, and where can we partner with you? Just a quick logo shot. Everybody's pretty visual, so I'm sure you guys are using a lot of these people. But particularly to what we're going to talk about today, a lot of the information is going to be on the top tier here, but I've got mixed in some of the rest of the tiers, as well. We divvy these up into kind of our tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 partners. Basically, tier 1 is where we spend most of our time. Tier 2 is where we spend a good amount of time, and tier 3 are kind of things that we're bringing into the fold as we speak. This slide's somewhat redundant based on what we talked about, but basically, you know, we have case studies on a lot of this stuff that we've been talking about. You can hit our website to get these case studies. These are also published on both VMware and EMC's website. We also have some video out there on EMC's website, and we've got some partners that have case studies out there as well, such as, you know, Dell Wise and people like that. So we'll jump into this here, profiling workloads. So this is really the first step in the process of trying to virtualize end user workloads. So Liquidware Labs and Lakeside basically own this you know, section of the portfolio here, where you're going to use one of these tools to try to right size the workloads that you have. These are tools that are usually driven by agents that get deployed to physical desktops. They allow you to collect information about those desktops and figure out what you're going to need for resources to support virtualizing that workload. So just as an example, you know, you might not know every single application that's out there that your users are running. A tool like this is going to allow you to grab that information and find out, you know, oh, my people are heavy users of Adobe Photoshop or, you know, whatever. And it might be an application that was installed by an end user that you didn't know about. In some cases, you're going to know all the applications, but maybe you don't know what the performance is like on those desktops. So this is a good tool to kind of level set, get an idea of what your environment looks like, and move forward with you know, sizing your environment and testing out use cases. Basically, what we want to try to get to out of profiling workloads is get a user breakdown and group your users up by use case. So you might have some general task workers, moderate application users, and power users. And this will also help you to figure out, you know, which ones do I want to try and tackle first. You know, I would say up until this point, most people try and start with the general task workers and see if they can virtualize those, and you know, then move through the rest of the stack afterwards. This really helps you to kind of line this up into you know, a profile of a virtual machine. So your general task worker, you know, these are just examples. They're not, you know, hard set in stone, but, you know, you could do some testing and find out, okay, my general task workers work great with 2 virtual CPUs, 4 gigs of virtual memory, and 64 megs of video RAM, and I need about 10 IOPS per desktop to make this happen. One of the things that we strongly suggest, and we actually have an offering for this, is called user acceptance testing. User acceptance testing is basically an offering that we bring in hardware, we install View, we let you get it going in your environment, and we work with you on testing out a few use cases and doing some documentation on that. The idea is that your sizing comes out correctly, and more importantly, you find out if your applications will actually even work within that environment. You know, this is a great investment if you're looking at, you know, trying to virtualize 500, 600, 800 users all the way down to 100 users. And it will really help you avoid the pitfalls of, oh, I didn't think about that before I went and spent, you know, $500,000 on virtualizing, you know, 800 users or whatever it was. So the idea behind this is it's an insurance policy to make sure that you don't step into that trap. So let's talk about some of the building blocks of View. So a lot of you guys have probably seen this diagram. This is a classic, you know, VMware View diagram of what the EUC portfolio looks like. They've added a few components on here over time. With some of the later releases of View 6, you can actually see that they've added this whole RDS sessions into the mix here, which is basically, you know, terminal servers, competes directly with Citrix XenApp. You know, it's really that checkbox to say, yeah, that we can do this as well. The next area that we've got is the this space up here in the application space. So this is, you know, virtualized applications, published applications, software as a service integration with Horizon Workspace, and ThinApp. One thing that's not on this diagram that we're going to talk about is app volumes, which fits up in that ThinApp category kind of. You know, other than that, this is pretty much the view environment that we all know and love and that we've all researched. So any questions on this at all? I guess you guys are probably familiar. Okay. So what do we get when we do virtualization with VMware View? Well, one of the common misconceptions is that I have to buy View and then I also have to go out and I have to buy vSphere licenses. And the way that VMware packages View is they bundle it all together. So when you buy concurrent user licenses, you get however many licenses of vSphere that you need to be able to run all of your desktop instances. So on top of that, they give you Enterprise Plus version of vSphere, which is basically the fully unlocked version. So you can do distributed vSwitches, you can do vCNS, you can do all the advanced things that you can do within vSphere. You can leverage that within your View environment. vMotion, high availability, all of that stuff is still built into the hypervisor. It's the same exact hypervisor that you guys are using in the server virtualization environment. So from a server's perspective, the first thing, that's kind of the first thing that people look at, right? All right, what do I need for servers? And the truth is, really, you can use anything. The VMware hardware compatibility list is a vast landscape these days. You know, typically from what I see out there, we've got a lot of people using, you know, Cisco, HP, Dell, and IBM. Probably not IBM so much anymore, but a lot of Cisco UCS lately. That seems to be something that people are really hot on right now. And then you've got your traditional HP and Dell servers that are out there still. But basically anything on the VMware HCL will work in this case. One of the things that I did want to call out is that VMware actually does support vSAN now as well for View. And vSAN is basically using local storage in one of these nodes and actually presenting the local storage out as SAN storage to all of the hosts. Minimum 3 hosts, and you have to have a solid state disk inside of the host to use for caching. If any of you guys are EMC customers or NetApp, this is like fast cache or flash cache or the PAM cards from NetApp, you know, any of those types of things. But very nice use case for those of you who are looking at virtualizing in smaller environments. If you're looking at, you know, 50, 100, or 150 desktops, and that's all you're ever going to be, vSAN is a great solution for you. It avoids the, you know, the cost of traditional SAN storage if you don't want to go down that road. Next thing that oftentimes gets overlooked is actually load balancing. The connection servers that front end your View environment are actually nothing more than, you know, Windows, you know, 2008 or 2012 virtual machines, and you know, they don't have native load. Well, they have Windows network load balancing, but it's not really great in an enterprise. And if any of you have tried to run it in virtual environments, it's even more challenging to run in a virtual environment. So look at vendors like F5, A10 Networks, Barracuda even. They do a good job at little appliance-based solutions. You can load balance all of your connection servers together. And if you're looking at the full stack where you're looking at workspace and other applications, load balancing comes in handy for not only the connection servers, but those services as well. And try not to look at this purchase as an only for VDI purchase. Think about the rest of your environment. If you've got Exchange clusters out there or Windows clusters, you can use this technology to front end a lot of those systems as well. So it can come in very handy for other things. Remote access, again, load balancing is in play, but it's in the DMZ here instead. And what we really want to try to focus on this remote access thing is really the two-factor authentication. So in previous versions of Vue, I think prior to 4.5 or 4.6, they would only support RSA Secure ID, and that was it. That was your only option. So as an EMC partner, we're okay with that, but some of you guys may want to use some other technologies that are available. So now they actually support anything that will integrate with Radius. So you can make Radius call to it, you can do two-factor authentication. Next thing is storage. So we found that that one of the things that gets overlooked the most and is kind of the hardest to calculate is how much storage capacity do I need, and how much, more importantly, how much IOPS do I need in the environment. So VMware kind of published general guidelines. You know, they say kind of a low-end user is about 10 IOPS, and you've got, you know, kind of medium users are 15 to 20, and then real high-end users could be as high as 40 or 50 IOPS. Now you start doing the math on that out, and you multiply it by hundreds of users, you can be into a, you know, pretty sizable storage device. Well, over the years, you know, all-flash arrays are becoming very popular storage platforms, and they've come down significantly in price. And you know, these are actually becoming the preferred platform to deploy virtual desktops on. We like Extreme IO for a variety of reasons. One of the biggest reasons that we like it is it does inline deduplication. So as you would imagine, virtual desktops deduplicate incredibly well because a lot of the content is identical for all intents and purposes. So between Composer and the inline deduplication, we've seen environments, you know, 20, 30, 40 to 1 deduplication ratios, and they recently added compression into this as well. So we see, you know, significant capacity savings on this platform. The other thing that's nice about this platform is most of the I/O is actually serviced out of DRAM, which is a lot different than the way that a lot of the other all-flash providers do things. So servicing out of DRAM allows you to service hundreds of thousands of IOPS per second, but it allows you to service it at less than a millisecond worth of latency, which is a critical piece of information. You know, 3, 4, 5, 10 milliseconds doesn't sound like a big deal. When you're talking about it on the storage platform, it can make the difference between, you know, a 20-second login time and a 1-minute login time. So we've found that this is incredibly successful in the VDI space. Certainly not limited to the VDI space, but that's what we're talking about here today. So if you haven't looked at it, take a look. It's definitely worth looking into. There's other all-flash vendors out there, but this is kind of what we like to use. Zero clients. So this is another critical piece of the puzzle here. A lot of people say, well, I don't really care about the clients, I'll just reuse something. The reason why you're doing virtual desktops is actually to eliminate the operational expense associated with managing the endpoint, right? That's why all of us are in this room together today, is we want to stop visiting the desktop. So zero clients are critical in the fact that they're firmware driven, they're centrally manageable, I can push updates to them centrally, and I can have them configure themselves on boot. If I start using Windows desktops out at the endpoint, I've still got to manage them. I've got to patch them, I've got to push updates out to them, I've got to, you know, I've got to manage images on the different thin clients that I have. Zero clients are all driven by firmware. They all use the same firmware package. Doesn't matter which vendor you buy them from. We like 10Zig for this. This is all that they do, is thin clients and zero clients. So you're not going to get that spin on it like we're HP, we have, thin clients and storage and servers, and you should buy everything from us. Well, that might not be the right solution for everybody. Maybe it is for you, but we like these guys. They're independent. They have a great portfolio, good support, good local sales team to work with. If you need any demo gear or anything like that, they're always very good about getting you some test boxes so that you can try them out. And best overall, a lot of times they're the same or cheaper than the larger big box providers that you guys have out there. Managing profiles and applications. So this is kind of the evolution of the way that people look at VDI. A lot of people virtualize, they get in the game, they do some basic profile management, and as they onboard more difficult users, this is usually the place where they're looking to expand their footprint a little bit as far as management software is concerned. Liquidware Labs does a great job at managing profiles. So VMware Persona Management that's built into VMware, they do an all right job with it. It's a good, basic effort. It's very similar to the way that Windows Roaming Profiles works, but they do it through a series of scripts that work more efficiently than Windows Roaming Profiles. Liquidware Labs has a similar approach, but they're much more robust than VMware Profile Management is. It seems to work a little bit better. Customers have an easier time managing it, and their dashboard is much easier to use than going through and applying group policies to everything. So this is a nice tool. They have a kit that you can buy called the VDI Essentials Kit, and it comes with 3 of their products. The Profile Unity is one of them, but it also comes with Stratosphere UX and Stratosphere Fit. So you can actually buy this suite and start using it from day one when you're trying to manage, assessing your user base. And you can also take it up into the VDI space and use it for managing user experience as well as managing profiles. So good kit, very much all-inclusive, complementary to the VMware solution, but it also works well on physical desktops as well as Citrix, Zen Desktop, and Zen App. So if you've got a mixed environment, this is a great way to get your profiles to be compatible between all of the different platforms. Next is we have software called App Volumes, which was recently acquired by VMware, probably about 6 months ago, I would say. And the software was originally a company called Cloud Volumes. This is very interesting, the way that this software works, because it's a lot like what VMware tried to do in View early on with what they called persistent disks and user data disks. This works much better than that. The idea here is that we run a capture process on applications, much like we do in ThinApp. So we install an agent onto a capture VM. We start the capture process. We run through the install of the application, and we capture that application into, or several applications if you would like, into what they call an app stack. The app stack is basically a VMDK file, and we can store that in a centralized repository data store. Again, this is why the Flash comes in really handy. If you're using something like an Extreme IO, you can just make another data store on your Extreme IO, store the app volumes, app stacks right on the Extreme IO, and because all of the VMDK app stacks, they'll basically get attached to a variety of virtual machines in read-only state based on the users that you want to receive the applications, but it obviously commands a lot of reads on the data store. So if you have an all-flash array, you can just keep that app stack data store on the all-flash array, and your apps are lightning fast. When you associate a user with the app stack gets automatically attached to the user's virtual machine when they log in. So it allows them to keep using a non-persistent desktop, and it assembles their VM by basically attaching that VMDK, and it merges the VMDK data into the C drive. So it looks like it's a natively installed application to the OS. So as an example, if you have like a PowerPoint, PowerPoint file on your desktop, you log in. If you were using ThinApp, the application association wouldn't happen until you launch the ThinApp application, right? So the PowerPoint file would look like that little white blank piece of paper looking thing, and when you go to open it, it wouldn't know what program to use. So with app volumes, you can attach the application to the VM as soon as the user logs in. It instantly changes that application association because all those registry keys and everything get merged in. And when the user launches that file from the desktop, it knows that it's supposed to use PowerPoint to open that file. So it's a real great utility. They do the same thing for user-installed applications. So if you've got people who are on kind of the cusp of, do I give them a standalone persistent desktop, or do I include them into the the non-persistent pool that I have? If they really want user-installed applications, this is a great way to give it to them. Same process happens, except the app capture doesn't take place on a capture VM that you manage. It attaches a VMDK to the user's VM and allows them to install their own applications and captures them while they're using the VM. When they're done with the VM and they log out, it detaches the VMDK and it will reattach it to the next machine that they log into. So really powerful tool. If any of you guys have used View before, this was one of the areas that was a difficult nut to crack. These users that want to be able to install their user applications could never really get to that unless you were giving them a full persistent desktop.
Brad, if you had application upgrades in the app stack, do you have to recapture from scratch, or can you edit the existing capture?
So excellent question. You can absolutely edit the app stack. So there's a great, I probably should have put a screenshot of the dashboard in here because I figured there would be a lot of questions on this. But when you go into the dashboard, you'll get a list of all of your app stacks, and you can actually choose update, and it will attach it to a capture VM for you. You can go in and you can upgrade the application, and when you're done, you say finish, and it will recapture that app stack, and then the next time the users log in, they'll get the new application.
Does this include with Enterprise Plus like ThinApp was?
So VMware, as everybody knows and loves, VMware has been rebranding a lot of stuff lately. The app volumes is sold both a la carte, and it is included in the Horizon Suite Enterprise. So anybody who bought VMware View Premier Edition already owns Horizon Suite Standard. And then if you bought something after they switched over to the Horizon nomenclature, you should know which version that you're in, which bucket that you're in. But the Horizon Suite Enterprise includes this. It includes vCops for View. It includes a few other things. So if you're looking at using some of these tools between this and vCops for View, it would be worthwhile to bump up to the Horizon Suite Enterprise if those products interest you. There's a few other nice to haves in there, but these are the major ones. Horizon Suite Enterprise also includes Mirage and Workspace. Workspace is really single sign-on into software as a service applications and being able to give a web portal to publish applications out of through RDSH or whatever. Mirage is really more of like a physical desktop management utility where you can do image management of desktops basically. My opinion, not the most polished of products yet for the Mirage piece, but the rest of the suite is really nice, really easy to use. So ThinApps, we talked a little bit about ThinApp, but the way that ThinApp works is really great for if you're trying to distribute something on like a USB thumb drive. You want to capture an application, drop the ThinApp onto a USB drive, give it to a sales guy and say, here you go, you can go out and take this into the field and present something to somebody or whatever it is that you captured. In view deployments, we found that a lot of people don't actually aren't able to use them effectively. The rollout of thin apps using the View Administrative Console is a little cumbersome. So thin app, great for mobility of applications. Not so great when you want it to be easy to use for users. It is nice that you can package the app up and you can open it up on almost anything. But when you have a user, the way that the user expects to use Windows is the way that they expect it to be on like a physical desktop. So if I'm a user and I sit down at a physical desktop, I want to click the PowerPoint file icon that I want to open. I don't want to open PowerPoint and then go File, Open, and find the file that I want to use, right? That's just not the way that users use the Windows OS. So Thin App definitely has a purpose. I think that App Volumes is a much better option for non-persistent virtual desktops than Thin App. I think we're going to start to see a lot of interest from people in App Volumes. Quite honestly, I didn't even know Cloud Volumes existed until VMware bought them, and they seem to have a really great product. So yeah, any questions on Thin App? Good. All right, so dealing with high-end graphics. So this is a good topic because without giving too much away, some people are predicting that this is going to change next month. So right now, the way that you can implement graphics acceleration in a virtual desktop environment is using a card from NVIDIA called the Grid card. So Grid is basically NVIDIA's high-end GPU platform that can be shared within your virtual desktop environment. It's a graphics card. If any of you are gamers out there or anything, it's similar size to like a GTX 760, about yay big, so it doesn't fit in a blade platform at all. Requires some special power supplies, and NVIDIA actually has a matrix of servers that have been certified to operate Grid cards. They have all the right power supplies and cable connectors and all of that stuff that are involved. Basically, the way that this works is there's a driver that gets installed into the hypervisor, and we install the card into the server. And essentially, there's a few options that we turn on the virtual machine to enable 3D graphics. When we enable 3D graphics, basically the driver here is going to broker user VGA traffic out to the GPU. Now, the big difference between GPU and CPU is GPU is made to do this type of work. All right, so this understands DirectX and OpenGL and all of those protocols that we use in video. In a traditional sense, if we don't have this, all the video actually gets rendered in CPU. So it falls down a little bit when you start getting into some of the advanced graphic use cases like SolidWorks and AutoCAD and even full screen YouTube videos and stuff like that. So one of the things that we've noticed is as time's gone on, I've been doing View for 5 or 6 years now, since it was, VMware View 1.1 or whatever it was. And one of the challenges is, multimedia is becoming more day-to-day for everybody. A lot of people are doing video training for their workforce. You're watching, a video about how your 401k works from Fidelity, or I'll say John Hancock, since we're in the John Hancock suite. And, you're doing all of these things that are more multimedia intense. And actually the most basic example that you can give that makes it gel with a lot of people is everybody pretty much uses Google Maps and Google Earth, right? They've merged those two technologies together basically. So when you do your satellite view of your Google Maps, a lot of that is actually rendered in OpenGL. So, this is becoming more of a day-to-day regular life activity to be interacting with things that kind of need GPU power. We've noticed that YouTube videos run incredibly well with this technology, even in this state, the way that it is now. VMware and NVIDIA have already announced, but they haven't launched what exactly it is that they're going to do. I would say if you go to VMware's website, they have a big secret that they're announcing on the 2nd or 3rd of next month. I'll let you guess what it is, but there's a technology that they've said that's coming out, which is called vGPU, which is basically going to eliminate this driver, essentially, so it's going to become part of the native hypervisor, and you're going to be able to time slice GPU the same way that we time slice CPU inside of the host. So we turn that on individual VMs and within View desktop pools, and now all of a sudden that pool becomes empowered to be able to do some higher end graphics. So I think that this is going to be involved in a lot of View deployments moving forward. I know that I'm putting it into my proposals and things like that with the different customers that I'm working with, so that they see it up front, and I let them tell me that they don't need it. It's just something that I think is going to be more prevalent as users are virtualized. Makes sense? Any questions? This is kind of a newer thing, so okay. And as you can see, vGPU, this is what I was just talking about. The idea is that you're going to get a GPU instance for every VM that we have going out there, instead of trying to software broker it through a driver or a shim, whatever you want to call it, in the hypervisor. Sharing GPU the same as we manage CPU. So it'll become a non-event to do this. It's something that you can just slap the card in and go with it. So wanted to also go over some optional add-on tools that I've been seeing people using a lot and been successful with. And obviously one of the things that we left out earlier is antivirus. So antivirus is one of those things, some people believe that they don't need it in a View environment. If you're doing refresh desktops on logoff and the whole machine is being rolled back every time, I've had people tell me I don't think I really need an antivirus client for that type of a system. So everybody's security policy is different. I would say the manufacturer that we've been working the most with lately has been Trend, their deep security product. McAfee's got McAfee Move. Sophos has something, I forget what it's called. Kaspersky's got something. The big gaping hole in this space has actually been Symantec. A lot of people use Symantec endpoint protection, and apparently they didn't think it was important enough to come to the table with a product to work with this. But I recently read that they were actually releasing something, so I think they're catching up at this point. So whoever your antivirus vendor is, basically the idea behind this is that you stick a virtual appliance on each of your ESX hosts, and the virtual appliance is what enforces the policy for all of the VMs that are on that host. So instead of installing an agent inside of each and every VM, you can actually get away in a lot of cases with agentless antivirus in this. And remember earlier I referred to vCNS, which is vCloud Network and Security. That's basically the old vShield endpoint and the vShield Edge. All those vShield components are wrapped into that suite now. That comes with your View environment. So you can light up an instance of vShield Manager and turn on vShield endpoint on all your ESX hosts, and you can integrate it with a product like this for nothing, other than the costs of the licensing with the AV vendor. So this is totally included. It's something that a lot of people forget about that they can have access to, and it's a nice way to manage your virtual desktops. It keeps you from having massive quantities of updates being pushed out to all of these endpoints all at the same time, and scans kicking off all at the same time. It's a good centralized management utility for that. Two-factor authentication. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. RSA is usually the first thing that people think of when they talk about two-factor. although ever since their security breach a few years back, we've had some security people that just say, well, I don't trust that they're all the way secure anymore because of that. So we've seen people move to software like Vasco. There's other providers out there for tokens and soft tokens. The other thing that we've seen an increase in is a product called Imprivata. So Imprivata, what their specialty is, it really started in the healthcare industry. They specialize in badge in and badge out. So of physical desktops, virtual desktops, they support proximity keys where you might wear a lanyard around your neck and have a proximity device so that when you walk up to a terminal, it logs you in. Again, that was a real great healthcare use case for operating room nurses and doctors to be able to walk up to a terminal and be automatically logged in. They actually support integration with facial recognition as well. So if you really want a second factor in that case, beyond just the badge, you can badge in and it'll look at your face to make sure that you match up with the badge that you're using. So very cool stuff. It's out there. All works very well. I've got customers that use all of these, so it's good stuff. So other things to think about in my VMware View environment. So no matter how many times you say it, power and rack space are the bane of everybody's existence. It's always the last thing that you forget about. And you go, oh, I don't have enough rack space, or I don't have enough contiguous rack space to be able to put all these things in. So keep an eye out on that. IP addresses. Best advice that I can give you is if you're deploying virtual desktops, make a new VLAN for them. The virtual desktops all need an IP address, and the zero clients all need IP addresses. So the endpoints, leave them on the same subnets and everything that they've always been on, and light up a new VLAN with the networking team to be able to make a DHCP scope and everything that fits your needs for the number of desktops that you're looking to deploy. KMS server. So this is another one that catches a lot of people by surprise. Microsoft activation keys work great for like a laptop that gets activated once and you take it with you. However, what happens if I destroy the machine every time and I recreate it every time? I'm going to blow through my Microsoft activations very quickly. And Microsoft's answer to that is a product called KMS Server. KMS is built into Windows Server. All you have to do is enable it. It's a couple of commands to turn it on, and you need to make sure you have the right license key to enable it. But anybody who's buying volume licenses of Microsoft, or that has a campus agreement or an enterprise agreement, you have KMS keys. You just have to log into your licensing portal to get them. One other thing that I like to give people the heads up on that I found out after messing around with this a lot when the first time that I tried to do this for KMS, because Windows XP didn't have such a thing. It wasn't a big deal to activate them every time. They have this whole structure of license keys at Microsoft. Believe it or not, if you plug in your Server 2008 R2 key into your KMS server, it actually covers your Windows 7 keys as well. So it's very confusing, but that's the way that it works. And me giving you that advice, you can thank me later. I saved you like 8 hours of looking around the internet trying to find out how that works. The other thing that you can keep in mind here too is Office. Office can actually be licensed by KMS. So if you're doing Office, I would strongly suggest that you use KMS. Again, you'll burn through your MAK keys if you don't. And this really helps. It's actually kind of a requirement if you're doing Office over app volumes, because every time that you deploy that app volume, that app stack to a user, it's going to go out and look to activate. So just be mindful of that. We were talking about this earlier with the fellows from Kobe Sawyer there. Where are your server VMs going to go? When I do projects with my customers, I pretty much set the stage during the pre-sales process when we're scoping all of this stuff out that you should put your server VMs in your server virtualization environment. It's where all of your backup jobs live. It's where all of that stuff that you're used to doing to manage servers is done. So it's best to put it there. All the VLANs and everything that are associated with servers all live over there. All of that process and policy and everything lives over there. Put it there. Your virtual desktops should live in their own cluster and preferably in their own vCenter. There's a lot of activities that take place that View leverages vCenter for. The cloning operations, the snapshotting, all of that stuff is commands that come from View that go to vCenter, and vCenter is actually executing those tasks. So it takes the burden off of your server virtualization environment if you can do all of those operations in a separate vCenter. And again, your vCenter licenses are included in your View licensing, your concurrent user licensing. So you don't have to buy a separate vCenter, it's included. The only thing that you have to do is you have to spin up that Windows virtual machine to be able to operate it. Again, that Windows machine can live in your server virtualization environment. Making firewall changes. So allowing access from the outside to these devices is going to require you to poke a few holes in your firewall. Are you using a managed firewall solution? Do you have somebody on-prem who knows how to do that work? It's a good thing to think about ahead of time. The other thing that I would add into this is certificates. Certificates catch people by surprise all the time. Certificates are actually not too bad to deal with, but they can be messed up pretty easily if you do them wrong. You really need to look into buying a commercially signed certificate. It is possible to use internal CA to validate a certificate and roll it out internally. But if you've got people that roam around externally or that connect from non-corporate owned devices, it's tough to push your roots and intermediates to all of those devices. If you use somebody like a GoDaddy or a VeriSign or something like that, your roots and intermediates are pushed out through Windows updates by Microsoft to everybody anyway. So that's a big gotcha. I also get the question a lot of times, can you use wildcard certificates? The answer is yes, you can. As long as it matches up with the URL that you're using, the public-facing URL, you can use a wildcard, no problem. 10 gig. So a lot of people are using 10 gig in the core environment, in the core switching environment now. One of the things that you want to check is make sure that you got enough ports. I know it sounds silly, but sometimes we took copper ports for granted because we always had a lot of them. With 10 gig, that's not usually the case. Usually you might have a blade or a 48 port, stackable type switch, and you're using it for a lot of stuff. So double check and make sure you get enough ports. And then licensing for virtual desktops. So if you're covered by a campus agreement or an enterprise agreement, chances are you're covered on the Microsoft side of things. If you're accessing virtual desktops from a zero client or a thin client, you're going to make sure that you buy the right quantity of VDA licenses. They're called virtual desktop access licenses. That's where VDA comes from. Any questions on this stuff? Good? All right. So I want to give everybody a few minutes to get to the next session. So what are we going to do, the question thing? All right. So we had a good piece of trivia that we found out the other day. So last weekend, Tom Brady broke a passing record. Anybody know what it was? The touchdown? Boom! You even got the follow-up question that I was going to ask. Who broke whose record did Tom Brady broke? It was did Tom Brady break? And it was Joe Montana's touchdown passing record in postseason. So Kayla's got your gift card in the back there. And thank you guys all very much for coming to my session. I know you guys can only pick 3 every day, or this afternoon, so I appreciate you making mine one of yours. So thanks again, guys and girls.